Hello and welcome, and we're here talking with Joanne Sweeney-Burke, and we're going to be talking about your new book as well, Joanne, Social Media Under Investigation, Law Enforcement and the Social Web. First of all, thanks for joining us here.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, the book. What's the book about?
So the book basically is about how police forces use social media. So I've researched for the very first time how An Garda Síochána use social media in Ireland, and then I benchmarked their experiences and activities against best practice across the world. So it's definitely a first look inside social media in an Irish context.
And why write the book? Because it's one thing to turn around, because social media is your background, it's what you do, it's your business as well. So why decide that it was time to write a book about it?
Well, I actually did my primary research on An Garda Síochána during my Masters in Digital Marketing, and frequently my tutor said to me, Joanne, it's not a PhD you're doing, keep it narrow, and I felt really limited. So after that was presented and published, I actually the following weekend sat it down at my kitchen table and started writing the book, because I'd learned so much. There was no room for it in the Masters, and I felt, as authors say, there's a book in this.
And how long did it take you to write? I mean, what time frame are we looking at here?
It took me every weekend, so a Saturday and a Sunday, for 6 months, which isn't too bad really.
Oh, fair enough. And how does Ireland compare, and the law enforcement services in Ireland compare to, we'll say, the rest of the world as well? Because I know you were at the Smile conference over in the United States, where you got to talk to law enforcement about how they use it over there. So what is the contrast there? What's the difference?
Really, there's a huge difference between how An Garda Síochána use social media and, let's say, for example, NYPD in New York, Toronto Police, or even West Midlands Police in the UK. I would say that the Irish police force are experimenting with social media as opposed to strategizing for social media, and that's quite normal, because I found other forces are doing exactly the same. Because if you think about a police force, they're conservative by nature, they're reluctant adopters of new technologies, and listen, police officers are there to investigate and solve crime. That's how they were trained. They're not trained as marketers or social media animals, so it's not in their natural set of skills to do it, and police forces sometimes rely on skills in-house.
Are they reluctant because it puts them in a very public light? They're in a very public platform, which may not be conducive to an investigation or something like that. What is the hesitancy there? Is it just they don't understand it to a certain extent?
By and large, my experience and research has shown that management buy-in doesn't come, it's not forthcoming because they don't understand social media. That's the basics of it. Look inside it a bit further, yes, they're reluctant that the officers are actually using it. Can we trust 13,500 police officers in Ireland to actually use social media and be the voice of the force? That's why they keep it controlled to a very small group of people, mainly in the communications department, but then experimenting with road traffic and with community policing. But remember when email came, people were like, oh my God, we're going to be able to send emails. And what if we mess up on an email? This is just a natural add-on to technology and to communication, and in NYPD in New York, they now send their officers on Twitter training, and they expect officers to have their own Twitter account, because who helps you solve crime? The citizens of the state. You need intelligence and information from them, so you should be reaching out to them at all aspects, so offline on the beat or online on the social web. But of course it comes with criteria as to how to use it and not mess up.
You mentioned the An Garda Síochána traffic division. Their Twitter account is very, very popular for a lot of reasons. It gives good information, but they also the use of fun and comedy as well to make some of their points. Is that, I suppose, one of the successes that we can talk about in terms of how law enforcement in Ireland has used it successfully?
Absolutely. They strategically use humour in their social media, and I've just come from delivering a social media workshop, and one of the first things that I tell my learners is you've got to have fun and be social on social media. So when I probed them a bit more about humour strategy, they told me that, well, actually we needed to build an online community. We discovered that we were good on Twitter, when we, put out information about, animals off a farm crossing the road and causing a huge traffic jam, people reacted. Now, humour is subjective, so we might not all find their tweets funny, but it's allowed them to build a community on Twitter of over 80,000 followers. So when they need their community to work for them in the event of a missing person or a road traffic accident or a criminal investigation, they reach out and they say, we need your help, can you help us? And they've said it works, the public respond.
And it ties us nicely back into the book as well. What's in the book for law enforcement? What's here that they can pick up and go, here's something that we can actually start using in our law enforcement and what we do?
Well, I'll give you an answer to that question by some feedback that I got in Phoenix, Arizona last month when I was at the SMILE conference, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Edmonton in Canada said that the book is now mandatory reading material for anybody in their communications department, and they told me that it's a practical guide, it's a useful handbook, you can dip in and dip out of any of the 12 chapters to get some advice, and there's also a really good index at the back and lots of infographics. So it's a practical, useful guide, and it is your starting point, so it will give you tips but also benchmark where you are compared to other forces.
Is that important as well? I mean, you mentioned benchmarking, that law enforcement thinks that they have to come into social media and they have to know it straight away, and that's it, and if you don't, you're in trouble. Whereas there has to be a ground, an entrance level, and then you build yourself up. That's how social media works, and the more you use it, the more practice you get, the better you get at it.
Yeah, and you don't jump into a car and just start driving. You'll get bad habits and you'll do it wrong and you'll continue those for life. So because the technologies are easy to use, people just assume that you can set up a Facebook page or a Twitter profile and off you go and you'll get it right, or you'll figure it out. Yeah, no, there are some really good foundational strategies and philosophies that you should use, and especially in a law enforcement context. So I train lots of different corporates and individuals and groups and non-profits, but when it comes to law enforcement, there are specific strategies that they will need to employ when using it for the business of policing. And as a former journalist and having worked with police forces and in the court system, I understand how they work, so I'm kind of bringing both of those genres, if you like, together.
Is it difficult to write a book as well, considering how quickly the technology changes and how quickly new platforms of social media come out? I mean, I was just getting used to Twitter when all of a sudden we had Snapchat and WhatsApp was all coming out as well. So where do we find a way to evolve ourselves into social media, because there's about 70 different platforms now at this stage?
There is, and you're right, and the book might date, so I'll have to bring out an updated version very soon. So what you do is you learn the skills of social media, you learn how social media operates, learn all about the social web and try them. There's always going to be updates. For me, when it comes to law enforcement and even the context of the book, that was one of the reasons why I set up the blog, lawenforcementobserver.com, so I could update sections of the book, push them out on a blog post, and make it relevant and current. Although the other side of that is that somebody said to me, you know what, Joanne, there's loads of articles on the internet, there's loads of blogs, you can read any amount of information about social media, but there actually isn't one book that says here's what you should be doing. So I think, whereas I might have updated editions, I think the core values in the book will remain solid for a while to come.
And what's it like when you see other people reading a book that you wrote? Because it might be strange, you put so much hard work and everything into it, and then somebody else is picking it up and they're reading it and they're passing judgment on your skills and all your knowledge and all that kind of stuff. Is it a surreal experience when you see somebody with your book, with your name on it?
It is. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to actually get it published first, to actually let it go to the printers and say, I've done editing it now, it's got to go. And for me, the audience was always police officers, law enforcement agencies. I've tried to bribe friends and families to read the book, but ultimately, it's not that their opinion doesn't count, it does. But I really need the reader, the law enforcement officer, to read that book. And yeah, when I went to America, it took me to go 10,000 miles away to Arizona for people to say, we actually love this book. It's required reading. Thank you for publishing it. then that makes it all the worthwhile. So I really want more police officers to read it. A lot of work went in. It's cost effective, it's real practical, and it will stand the test of time. I've also had policing universities and colleges buy it for their libraries. So perhaps the next natural step would be to try and get it on curricula.
Absolutely, yeah. You actually did this for your dissertation, am I right in saying that as well? So this isn't something that you decided, well, I'll just go do this. You actually, you had a thought, you wrote a dissertation about this already, so
yeah, I just like 20,000 words down. You know, the book is about 45,000 words, so I had a bit of a head start. I had to get rid of all the academic terminology and try and make it a bit more social and flow better. But yeah, it's based on primary research, desktop research, and you know, it really is unique. If I'm getting lots of sales from Amazon, my Amazon UK store, because if you Google law enforcement social media, there isn't a whole pile of stuff out there, and essentially in one book where you can pick something up and bring it with you, because you know we're still traditionalists. We still like the old book and the pen and paper. It's so important.
And I know that you're secretly going back over the book and having a read over it and see what you like, what you don't like, things like that. Can we expect a social media under investigation book perhaps in 3 or 4 years' time, as social media platforms evolve, as technology evolves, that perhaps it's time to revise that, maybe even sooner, depending on how it grows?
Absolutely. I'm already reaching out to other educational partners around the world. I've had some interest from the United States because I believe there's further research to be done. I think initially now I've exhausted the depths of research in Ireland. Now it's time for me to research the UK, the United States, Canada, mainland Europe, Asia, and see what they're doing with social media in a policing context. And I'm hungry for that. So I've already reached out to some universities and I'm having conversations, because I know that law enforcement agencies want to know what they should be doing, and I'm willing to be the person that goes and chases it and ties it all together. And it combines my love of writing, an interest in policing, and of course, being able to dip into social media 25 times a day.
But also, if people want to buy the book, find out for themselves, get informed, where can they get it? Okay,
so you can go onto my website, lawenforcementobserver.com, but I do know that the international audience like buying it off Amazon, and it's amazon.co.uk. And if you just put in law enforcement under investigation, oh my God, I've got the name of my book wrong. Social media under investigation, law enforcement on the social web. I did write that book.
Joanne Sweeney-Burke, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.